What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Player Pool. We're looking at the Saturday slate. We've got a two-game slate on Saturday, and it's going to be a slate with two division rivals facing off against each other, and one of those games might be a little bit more competitive than it looks on paper, and I'm going to get into it right after this.
We built another winning showdown lineup featuring Sunday night's Vikings versus Cowboys game. Here's how it went down.
Let's see what would happen if we put Aubrey in that captain. I think Aubrey could be busy tonight. I think the Cowboys are going to be able to move the ball, but they could stall out, and that'll set up Brandon Aubrey to be kicking long field goals tonight.
Aubrey's got one from 26, 37, and now 41.
Javonte Williams, this is going to be where Dallas maybe goes back a little bit to the run against this Minnesota team where Dak should struggle a bit tonight.
Williams into the end zone for a Cowboys touchdown.
I do kind of like Jalen Naylor. He's been getting targeted by J.J. McCarthy. Naylor is going to be very interesting for us tonight, especially with that ownership in this matchup. It's going to be overlooked.
McCarthy to the end zone. Touchdown, Jalen Naylor.
We got Dak to Lamb. Put McCarthy in there if we wanted to.
McCarthy gritty on his way to the end zone.
That's a little nasty right there.
Congrats to GameScript viewer Basie Babe for shipping DraftKings $5 single entry showdown with this lineup. Subscribe at sportnuggets.com today to get all our showdown insights for the next game.
What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. We're going to be going into the two-game slate for Saturday on this show. We got Philly versus Washington. That's going to be a 44.5-point total with Philly as 6.5-point favorites in that one. And then we got Chicago versus Green Bay. We got a 46.5-point total in that one with Green Bay as 1.5-point favorites in that one. So a couple interesting games we got coming up on this Saturday slate. Division rivals. One of them has massive playoff implications. The other one has a team in Philly that is trying to clinch their division, but a team in Washington that would love to be the spoiler against Philly. And I look at the history of these games. It's pretty interesting between these two teams. So I'm going to get into that in a minute. Make sure to hit the like button, give me the 70 likes so I can put my favorite plays in the insight section of sportnuggets.com. Go over and sign up on sportnuggets.com for a subscription. We're going to go behind a paywall in a few days here before Christmas. So you're going to want to get in and sign up for a subscription now, because there's going to be an offer for the OGs that signed up for the subscription before we went to a pay subscription and tried out the free beta preview. There's going to be a offer to those people who are already signed up as OGs that is going to be a nice little discount over what the average monthly or what the overall monthly cost is going to be for that subscription. So you're going to want to check it out there. All the insights are going to be going to go behind that paywall. Been hitting on those insights recently. Had that Basie Babe ship on the Dallas game a couple nights ago, and then the other night we had another hit from a viewer where we had a Mosh 8124 ended up hitting this showdown contest for $8,500, and he went with the Waller lineup that we built the framework on that show. I had Waddle in there instead of Aaron Rodgers. And if I'd have put Aaron Rodgers in there, the lineup that I built on the show would have been the winner. But Masho ended up putting in that switch right there and ended up shipping that contest. So congrats to him. Also got a couple emails or messages on YouTube from a few other viewers who have shipped recently with the lineups used on the show. So we've been on a little bit of a heater like the last few games. And last night, my heat seeker was Terrence Ferguson. And Ferguson, of course, caught that touchdown When I do my underdog videos, I usually have a heat seeker who's more of a longer shot touchdown play. I've hit 3 out of the past 4 of those. I had Shadir Sanders scoring a rushing touchdown. I had who was it? It was Flanoy a couple games ago. He ended up scoring a touchdown. And then we had Culp score a touchdown. Devin Culp scored a touchdown for us, the beast. And then last night we had Terrence Ferguson with another touchdown. So actually it's like 4 out of the last 5 of those long shot touchdowns have hit. Been missing on the overall pick'ems in those by, like players that should be getting the yards that, like hitting the higher on their yards, but have been missing or lower on their yards. In the case of Puka Nacua last night, I was expecting a win game in last night's game, ended up not getting that. And Puka Nacua just absolutely obliterated his line. So it caused a lot of misery for me last night. I was more heavy on the Seattle passing game in that one. I went with the Seattle passing game as kind of a high risk, high reward situation. I wanted to kind of go against the narratives of Darnold versus the Rams and see how that played out. And it did not play out very well for most of the game. He ended up, scoring a couple touchdowns at the end of the game and winning the game for the Seahawks there. But overall, Darnold was not in the optimal lineups. It ended up being a Rams passing game in the optimals situation. My best lineup in that one, I actually had one that did pretty well. I had 592nd place, ended up finishing out. This was the $20 contest. I had Blake Corum in the captain, and Puka Nacua ended up being the winning captain. Obviously, he ended up having a monster night, 49.5 points. But if he hadn't scored that last touchdown and we got into something a little bit more out of Corum or Smith and Jigba, these were my 2v2s in this lineup. I was able to get Smith and Jigba in there because I had Corum in the captain instead of Nacua. And by having Smith and Jigba in there, I had an opportunity. If he had scored any points in the first half, he was basically blanked for the first half. He scored all this in the second half of the game. But if Smith and Jigba had done just a little bit more, I was about 10 points out or 14 points out of first. So if I'd have gotten, maybe 14 points out of Smith and Jigba, then this lineup would have looked a lot better and finished a lot higher than 592nd place. But it was a good construction. I like it when we get these shootouts, putting that cheap captain in there, which I had with Corum. He ended up scoring a touchdown for us. Another one was Ferguson. Ferguson only had 12 DraftKings points, but he was very cheap at 1,600. So he more than paid off his salary. He ended up being in the optimal lineup as well. We had Kenneth Walker, ended up getting 28 DraftKings points last night. Matthew Stafford with 33.8. Smith and Jigba, 23.6. Nacua, monster night, like I said, 49.5 points. And then Corum had 19.65 in the captain for me. So that gives you an idea of, how I'm thinking when I'm building these lineups for Showdown. And it's very similar kind of thinking when I do these lineups in these 2 and 3 game slates. Had a very good night on Thanksgiving with the 3-game slate. A lot of my insights paid off. I had Dontavian Wicks as an insight that night. He ended up going off. I had Jameson Williams. I had Christian Watson and a bunch of, I can't remember who else. There was a bunch of guys in that game that I wrote up that ended up going off. Thanksgiving was very good. Like that's where I actually won my Showdown contest. Ended up winning the $10 contest for the Detroit Lions versus Green Bay Packers. So we got the Packers again in this slate, and it's another division rivalry, this time against the Bears. And then we got the division rivalry between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. And that game is a little bit more interesting to me. I think that game has a good potential to be competitive. And let me see if I can show you real quick what I'm talking about. Go over to Pro Football Reference so we can call up these scores between Philly and Washington. So if we're going to the most recent game that they played, that was in 2024 in week 16. That score was 33-36 in favor of the Commanders. Hurts actually got hurt in that one, and it was Kenny Pickett as the QB for most of that game. And they still scored 33 points versus Washington to Washington's 36 points. This is the lowest scoring game. It was like the week 11 game of 2024, ended up being 26-18 in favor of the Eagles. But you go back a little further, we had 38-31. We had 34-31. We had 21-32. So a lot of 50-point totals in this one, and a lot are above 60 points in this rivalry between the Eagles and the Commanders. And I point this out as an Eagles fan because I never take the Commanders lightly when these teams face off, because it's always competitive. No matter how bad the Commanders have been in the past, for whatever reason, like when they face off against the Eagles, there's a chance that it could be like a nice little shootout for us and get us like one of those 60-point totals. So keep that in mind, because I think that the Green Bay versus Chicago game will be popular this week. Let me check and see what I'll see if the ownerships are up now. I'm going to get an idea of that, because if we're getting a under-owned Philly-Washington game, then we can completely take advantage of that. Let me get an idea of what that is. I want to see who the most popular quarterback is going to be. It looks like ownership has been posted from my source that I usually use. And let's see, I'm going to go to quarterback first. I'm going to see the most popular quarterbacks on the slate. Yeah, so Hurts is going to be the most popular, unfortunately. He's at like 48%. And then we got Mariota is going to be less popular at 12%. So Mariota might be a good option for us in this matchup against Philly this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at the injury reports, because we got injury reports. I'm going to cover them for both games up front. I'll start off with Washington, since we're talking about this game first. And if we look at Washington, we can see that Jaden Daniels is obviously out. So we got Mariota starting in this one. They're missing Laramie Tunsil, the left tackle. That's not good. We got a couple tight ends out. Obviously, Zach Ertz is on IR, and we got Colson Yankoff. Sounds like a wrestling character. We got Lucas Niang, who is on IR. As far as the defense, we're missing Eddie Goldman, some depth on the defensive tackles. Defensive end is pretty thin, with Jean-Baptiste is on IR, and same with Armstrong. So we're down to Jalen Holmes. Dietrich Wise is on IR. Trey Amos. Marshawn Lattimore is on IR on the cornerbacks. They were already kind of weak in the cornerbacks for the Commanders. They're giving up a boatload of points in the secondary. Jonathan Jones is questionable in this one. Let's go check out the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have had some offensive line injuries. They're missing their fullback, Van Sumeren. Lane Johnson is out officially. On top of that, we got Willie Lampkin and Cameron Williams on IR. Miles Hinton also on IR. So Lane Johnson is a significant one there. And on the defense, Jalen Carter is out. So that's going to be a significant upgrade for Washington. And Washington's going to have an opportunity to kind of take advantage of this Adoree Jackson matchup and Keely Ringo, which has kind of been a weak defenders there for the Commanders. And we might see Terry McLaurin get these opportunities. These guys are on the left side of the field. Let me check and see where Terry McLaurin is lining up the most. McLaurin is lining up on the left side of the field, so he's going to face off mainly probably against Quinion Mitchell, which is not Not a great matchup for him, but maybe they try to get him matched up on the other side there. We take a look real quick. Let's see what Terry McLaurin has done against this team, particularly last year when we had Quinion Mitchell on the team. Take a look and see what Terry McLaurin did against them last year. So we had McLaurin had 6 targets, 5 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown in one of those games. And then the other game, he had 2 targets, 1 reception, and 10 receiving yards. So Terry McLaurin, difficult matchup for him. In past games, he's had 12 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets. I would guess that he gets up there in targets in this one. Let's check and see what Washington's receiver core looks like this week. They've been pretty banged up on receivers recently, but it looked like they were pretty healthy. We got Noah Brown on IR still. We got Luke McCaffrey on IR, but we got Treylon Burks, we got Deebo Samuel, and we got Terry McLaurin. So Treylon Burks could be interesting if he's going to get that week matchup against those against Philly there. So that should be pretty interesting. Let me see what I think Deebo Samuel's been running primarily in the slot. I got to check a premium site to get that information real quick. I'm going to look at the last 8 weeks, and I'm going to see the slot receivers. Takes a second for it to load. Reason I do this, I want to kind of get an idea of confirming that Samuel, yeah, he's running 26% of his routes on the left slot. Samuel has been 28 on the right slot. So he's up against Cooper DeJean, which is a tougher matchup. And if we have Terry McLaurin against Quinion Mitchell, that's going to set things up for Treylon Burks for us a little bit here. We had him in the show a couple weeks ago. He ended up scoring a touchdown. That was the only catch that he had, so he didn't have a breakout game for us. But Treylon Burks has had a lot of good coach speak, and he could be a guy that gets his opportunity in this one. Let me see what Treylon Burks. I want to see if he's running the most of his routes against that matchup, which would be I need him on the right outside. Just double check that. Where's Quinion Mitchell? Let's see. Go over to Philly here. All right, so Adoree Jackson is on the left side. So we need Treylon Burks lining up on the right side the most. Leave you guys a little bit of suspense while I bumble around on this site. All right, so Treylon Burks is 26% of his routes are on the right outside. And 55% of his routes are on the left outside. So, that's got to give. Like with McLaurin back, I'm guessing that Burks will be running more routes on the opposite side. So he'll probably be the one that they line up, try to line up against Adoree Jackson the most. So I think Burks is going to be interesting for us this week, and he will be completely under the radar this week. I don't think anybody's going to be on Burks. Now, the history of this rivalry, like I said, it's been like 60 points in a lot of these games. So I really like this matchup between the Eagles and the Commanders. And I think that they have enough of these players on the Commanders that are going to be value plays and flying under the radar. I think most people will be focused on that the Chicago value players. Let me get an idea of where these receivers are going, because I got a situation in Chicago that I'm going to go over here in a minute. Highest owned, as expected, would be A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So, yeah, this Philly Washington game's not sneaking under the radar. All the guys in that game are the highest owned on the slate, but we can get it. You still get by with that Treylon Burks play. Let's see. As far as the popular guys in the other games, it's going to be like Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, and Romeo Dubs will have a little bit of ownership in Olamide Zaccheaus. So that's going to be interesting there. Let me get an idea real quick of tight ends while I'm on this site. Yeah, Loveland is going to be the most popular tight end. That's unfortunate. And yeah, okay. So just wanted to get an overview of the slate. This ownership just came out, so I'm trying to get caught up there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the injuries on the other side. We'll go to Chicago. Chicago has a lot of significant injuries. We're missing Rome Odunze in this one, and that's why you see that Colston Loveland ownership so high, because Odunze and Burden are both out. That's going to bump up the target share for Colston Loveland, who we've seen had a breakout game pretty recently. We're missing Roshan Johnson. We're missing, like left guard in Luke Newman, right guard too. So a little bit of depth issues on the guards. And then on the defense, we're missing Agbonmiga. We're missing Terrell Smith. We're missing Kyler Gordon, Zach Frazier, Shamir Turner, and Joe here. So we got some injuries to the Commanders D, but not as significant as the injuries that we have to their offense. They also got Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson was hurt, I think it was Jalen Johnson. He was hurt for most of the season, so they got him back recently. So their defense was already getting a lot of turnovers. So that's going to improve their defense even more. On the opposite side, with the Packers, their defense significantly took a hit when we lost. Let's see, where is that? Why is my mind drawing a blank? We lost Micah Parsons. What am I saying? Micah Parsons was the big hit. He tore his ACL, so he is out for the season. That's a massive blow to the Packers here. The Packers defense. Colin Oliver. The Packers defense is already weak on the road too, by the way. So losing Micah Parsons on top of that is going to be a significant freaking hit for this defense. On top of that, we're missing Colin Oliver, Nick Neiman, Brenton Cox, a bunch of guys besides Micah Parsons who are out as well. We got damage to the safeties with Evan Williams is questionable. On the offense, one of the significant ones that we're going to want to track is his Zach Tom questionable. We're going to want to track that over on Sport Nuggets and find out when that news comes out. Christian Watson is also questionable, and Josh Jacobs is questionable. Josh Jacobs has had a knee that he's been playing through. He's been doing well playing through that knee injury. And on top of that, we're missing Marshawn Lloyd. He is out this week, and Chris Brooks is questionable. So, Josh Jacobs, they're going to need him to play through that injury. Christian Watson, I think he's looking likely to play. The guy that's looking the most unlikely is going to be Zach Tom here. So we're going to want to keep an eye on sportnuggets.com. We'll go share this over. We'll go take a look at Zach Tom right now. To see what the latest updates on him are. Uncertain for Saturday's game. Unlikely to play Saturday. We'll take a look at this source. Zach Cruz Sure seems like the Packers will have Christian Watson and Josh Jacobs on Saturday, but probably won't have Zach Tom or Evan Williams and Micah Parsons, obviously. So, yeah, Zach Tom, it's a significant hit to that offensive line. The run game is worse without him, and the pass game is worse without him. So that's one that we're going to want to pay attention to for Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs, obviously. But I'll be honest with you, if that Philly game is going to draw more interest or too much interest, then Jordan Love seems to come through on these primetime slates. He's playing at 7:20 at Green Bay. I think they're playing in Green Bay. No, they're playing in Chicago. So they're playing 7:20 in Chicago. So on the road, like that is where the defense of Green Bay is weaker. They're weaker on the road. And Jordan Love, I think he plays a little worse on the road. But as we saw on Thanksgiving, like they went off against Detroit. So they're capable of exploiting an exploitable defense on the road. And we got, let's see, Chicago allowing 19.3 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So we're going to see Love in a spot where, he could potentially have a decent game in this one. He's had a good history against Chicago. We'll take a look real quick there. Let's see. I'm going to go back to Pro Football Reference for this one. And we'll take a look at Jordan Love's history against the Bears. He's had some good games against them. He's thrown a lot of 250-yard games and multiple touchdowns. Like if he got that tonight or on Saturday, it'd be enough to get him in the optimal lineup. It's going to be a little bit tricky, though, with that matchup that Jalen Hurts has. Kind of wish that Washington defense wasn't such a sieve this year, because then we'd have an opportunity to get Jalen Hurts, like with all the negative talk around him lately, at a discount. But we got last game against Chicago was December of 2025, so a couple weeks ago. He ended up having 234 yards and 3 touchdowns in that one. So pretty good game there. Previous ones, he had 261 yards and a touchdown, 316 yards and 2 touchdowns, 245 and 3 touchdowns. So he's kind of owned them the last few games that they've played. He's kind of taken over that ownership from Aaron Rodgers on Chicago, but they have lost a game. They lost that game in 2025 in week 18. I wonder if Love played in that one. Yeah, it was mainly Malik Willis split the game with him, so they must have benched their players in the middle of that game. But, yeah, Jordan Love has done pretty well against Chicago overall, and we're going to have a matchup where he has an opportunity to do what he did on Thanksgiving against Detroit, like where he just puts up a whole bunch of points for us. Let's see. He's basically the logical pivot, but let me see again what his ownership is. Jordan Love is 19%, so that's not terrible. That's manageable for a quarterback on a 2-game slate. So, yeah, Jordan Love will be in play for us. Let's go start with the Philly game, though. I got off on a tangent there. Jalen Hurts obviously has the best matchup on the slate. Chicago is giving up, Washington's giving up 22.1 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So that's good for Jalen Hurts. To the running back position, they are also very weak against the running back. They're giving up 29.3 DraftKings points. You can basically pick your poison against this Washington Commanders defense, because they're giving up 23.1 to wideouts too. So A.J. Brown will be in play. This could be one of those games where everybody's going to be on the passing game here. And we could take a Saquon Barkley stand here, but Saquon Barkley is also 82% owned. So we got the whole Eagles offense, or the highest owned guys on the slate. A lot of people are going to be onslaughting the Eagles here against Washington. Now, we can easily build a narrative and a case against the Eagles this week, the way that they've been playing. There's been a lot of talk about how bad their offensive coordinator is. And if people are overlooking that fact to jam in these Eagles, then that could, against this terrible Washington defense, these are division opponents. So the head coach, Dan Quinn, of the Commanders, also used to be the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And he's very familiar with Jalen Hurts. So, between his years in Dallas and, this second year as the head coach of the Commanders, he's faced off against Jalen Hurts a ton. So let's see Jalen Hurts' history against Dallas too here. We've seen his history against Washington. Let's go look at his history against Dallas. So we're going to go past 2024. We're going to go to 2023. That's when Dan Quinn would have last been there. We had 197 yards, no touchdowns, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns. As far as rushing, 36 yards and a touchdown, 27 yards, no touchdowns, 326 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then another 23 yards rushing there. That was a good game. So he had a couple good games there back to back with those 300 yards. But he's had enough bad games against Dan Quinn that we could make a case for it if we wanted to. I'm just sharing the tab now, but you can kind of see what he's done versus Dan Quinn's teams in the past. 197 yards, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns. As far as his rushing, the game where he had no touchdowns, was that no touchdowns or no interceptions? Yeah, no touchdowns there. 2 touchdowns there. He had 1 touchdown rushing too. So he had a pretty solid fantasy game in that one. So that was a big game. That was a big game, and that was a big game. So he's had some pretty decent games against Dan Quinn, but Dan Quinn also had shut him down in that 197 yards and no touchdown game. So we can build a case against him if we wanted to go that route, or we could try to just figure out a way to get different with Jalen Hurts lineup this week, which might be the idea that makes the most sense. Devontae Smith, obviously, in a good matchup too. Washington's given up 12.6 DraftKings points a game to the slot. Smith and A.J. Brown are the highest owned guys on the slate for wide receivers. So we don't have a really like a A.J. Brown versus Devontae Smith decision to make. They're both high owned. McLaurin will be high owned as well. He's only 5,900, which is surprising. But he's got Marcus Mariota throwing to him, and they are on against a Eagles defense giving up 17.4 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. Jalen Carter not there to help out in the pass rush. And if we get McLaurin matched up against Dory Jackson on some opportunities, then we could see some points scored there. Doesn't look like he faced off against Philly in the this season. Let's see. He's got Devontae Smith. We got Deebo Samuel. Samuel, not really interested there either. He hasn't really done much this season. Last few weeks, 7.3, 6.7, 11.1. He's, like I said, he's up against Cooper DeJean in this matchup, which I don't like so much. It should be interesting to see Treylon Burks situation in this matchup. That's kind of what I am most interested in this matchup. Let me check something here with Marcus Mariota. Let's see. He had a pretty good game against Denver a couple weeks ago. He ended up with 24 DraftKings points. He's been pretty good when he started the games and played all the way through. So I do like Marcus Mariota this week. I like that he's going to be pretty low owned, and he's in a rivalry game where they put up like 60 points in these matchups. So Marcus Mariota at 5K is going to be in play for us. And, he does have a capability of getting like 4 or 5 times his salary. That 24 DraftKings points against Denver stands out. 21 DraftKings points against Vegas. Let's find him against another tough defense here. See if he started against another tough one. Minnesota, he only had a couple attempts in that game. Not going to hold that against him. So, yeah, Marcus Mariota could be interesting this week. With the running back situation in Washington, this is going to be another interesting one. The Commanders running back situation, we were missing who were we missing last week? Last week we were missing Chris Rodriguez. He's back this week. The Eagles have been vulnerable to the run recently. We saw that with Chicago a couple weeks ago. Chicago just hammered them against the run. The Eagles have been giving up 17.4 DraftKings points, so they're still a good overall defense, but we have seen them exploited against the run recently. I tend to lean towards the pass game because the Commanders have nothing to lose in this one, so they might decide to just kind of attack and be aggressive in this one. Krosky Merritt had a decent game last week. 15.6 DraftKings points. That was against New York. Bigsby, could potentially be interesting in this matchup. If we go with a route where maybe Philly blows them out, then Bigsby would be interesting if he gets more run in the second half. He's been having a pretty decent yards per run. He had 8.5, 11, couple 11 weeks, tailing off last week with only 3.4, but he had 17 attempts last week. So at least he's starting to get a little bit of run now. Only 5.7 DraftKings points though. Let's see if we're going to Treylon Burks. He's the guy that I have a little bit of interest in this week against Philly. If he's going to be taking over that wide receiver 3 type of role and might face off against Adoree Jackson the most. Let's see. We got for tight end, we got Dallas Goedert. I do like Goedert this week. Washington has been giving up 19.4 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, so Goedert is definitely in play. And they've used him pretty well throughout most of the season. He's scored a lot of touchdowns, and you can see he's putting up points. 25 DraftKings points last week, 15.8 the week before. He also had a 17.8 week, a bunch of good weeks in the beginning. He was scoring a lot of touchdowns early on in the season. Then he kind of tailed off when Philly went on their little losing streak. But last week came alive again against Vegas, scoring 25 DraftKings points. So Goddard is in play. These tight ends on the Washington side, not so interested there. Philly's only giving up 19.7 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, so not a whole lot of interest there. Eagles D, could be interesting. There'll probably be another of the, popular Eagles plays this week, but keep in mind, the rivalry between these teams. You've seen the history. that history includes when the Commanders were pretty bad before they got Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels. So even with a bad Washington team, they were able to keep these games competitive. And that's where I remember it from, thinking going in one week, thinking that the Eagles were just going to, be able to stomp the Commanders and then having it be a competitive game. So, don't be surprised if the Commanders are able to put up a fight in this one. And especially they're playing, you could probably consider it their Super Bowl to be able to stop, the hated Eagles from winning the division, like in prolonging it another week, because the Commanders are going to be facing Dallas on Christmas too. So they're going to be facing both. They're going to be playing spoiler for each of these teams down the stretch. And, Philly could clinch the division with a win here, and the Commanders are not going to want to make that happen. So they're going to be aggressive. They're going to go all out in this game. So should be actually a pretty fun game. All right, so let's go and look at the Green Bay versus Chicago game. We got Jordan Love, like I was talking about earlier. He's interesting to me in this game. Second highest owned guy. So, he had 20.3 DraftKings points last time against Chicago. He's had, in some of these meaningful games against division rivals, he's put up big points, like 25.8 on Thanksgiving at Detroit, helping them win that game in an upset. He's got a full arsenal of weapons back because Jaden Reed should be back this week. I'm assuming that Christian Watson is going to play, but we got to keep an eye on the injury reports leading into that game and sportnuggets.com to see, what the status is. But like I showed you that nugget earlier where it seems that, Watson is probably the most likely of all those questionable guys to play. We want to keep that eye on that injury to Zach Tom too, and obviously Josh Jacobs. But the weapons are healthy for the most part if Watson plays. We got Dubs, Reed, Watson, Golden. Wicks is questionable, but he'll take a way back seat to these other guys, unfortunately, because he's in an interesting matchup this week. Let's see. Let me see something real quick. Okay, so I wanted to take a look at PFF and look at some of the man zone coverage matchups here. Try to find the right year here. Let's see. I'm going to look at the matchup for Chicago first. So the Packers are running zone coverage at a 6th highest rate in the league. Caleb Williams is not good against zone coverage. The guy that he's going to target the most is likely, would have been Luther Burden, but Burden is out. Behind him is Devin Duvernay hasn't run a lot of routes there, so he hasn't. He's not enough to get a good read on. Alameda Zaccheaus is the guy that they primarily target against zone coverage, so that explains the ownership we saw there. He has 0.26 yards or fantasy points per route run, according to PFF. So that is interesting. And DJ Moore, he takes a massive hit against zone coverage. So, it's going to be tough with this one. This is why Colston Loveland is so popular this week. Go to tight end real quick. Colston Loveland, 5 targets last week, 5 targets the week before. He's had decent amount of targets. He's going to be seeing a bump in usage here. against Green Bay. He had 12.9 DraftKings points against them last time. Let's see how many DraftKings points they're allowing to the tight end position. Giving up 10.7, DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So not a great matchup for Colston Loveland, but with the damage to the receiving core here in Chicago, don't be surprised to see him get a decent run in this one. But if he's 50% owned, he's an easy fade for us, knowing that he is probably who the Packers will be keyed in on, and the Packers are pretty good against the tight end position. Let me see if I can get a note here on that. I mean, he gets a massive bump in targets, but the matchup is not good for him with that 10.7 DraftKings points allowed by the Packers. But who knows with Micah Parsons out? Who knows how that's going to affect the the defense of the passing game in this one? The pressure is going to be less pressure, and Caleb Williams struggles massively with pressure, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league versus pressure. So, it should be a interesting situation there. Trying to build a case to go with Green Bay versus Chicago over Washington, Philly. It's tough to do, but if we look at the fantasy points allowed to wideouts by Chicago, they're giving up 23 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 19.3 to the quarterback position, 15.1 to the slot. So this game, sets up nicely for Jordan Love to have a decent game. Let me check something out. As far as the defense, the Bears are running man coverage at a top 10 rate. And the guy that they like to target the most, it's pretty evenly spread, actually. A lot of guys have 20% target rates. Dontavian Wicks is the main guy that they like to target at 28.6, but he's not going to get a lot of work now that we got all these players healthy, because he takes a massive bump down when they are all healthy in the wide receiver core here. Jaden Reed, 23.8% target route. He's probably, him and Watson are going to be the guys that I like the most in this matchup. I'm going to get an idea of what their ownership is. Yeah, both those guys are going to be lower owned, not low enough. They're both still over 30%. That's the problem with these 2-game slates. It's a little bit tough to try to narrow down when everybody's so high, has such high ownership. Jordan Love at 20%. That's pretty good, like I talked about. So we could go with these Love double stacks. That would get us a little bit different, and then we could run it back with Saquon if we wanted to, or we could go on slot with Josh Jacobs or something like that. Chicago's been allowing, only 18.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So they've been a pass funnel type of team. And then on the opposite side, Green Bay's defense has been good, but you can't really look at those numbers with Micah Parsons out, one of the best defenders in the league. So that's going to be like a tough scene to try to figure out. But I do like Jaden Reed. Made his return a couple weeks ago, 6 targets and 4 targets already in his first couple games back. He's going to break out any week now. And then we got Christian Watson, who's questionable, but we've seen what he's done since he got back. He's had some pretty decent weeks. That one on Thanksgiving had a pretty good week relative to the slate on a 3-game slate. Maybe he can do the same for us on a 2-game slate. So Christian Watson and Jaden Reed both in play for us. I think the run back there would be Zacchaeus, but Zacchaeus drawing only 15% ownership, so I don't hate that. But when we're building, we can kind of try to figure out which direction to go here. So as far as Chicago 2, the running backs versus Green Bay. Green Bay's been giving up 21.5 DraftKings points a game to the run. And if they're missing Micah Parsons, let me see what his grade was against the run. Yeah, his run defense grade was 26 out of 112 defenders. Pass rush was significant. He was second out of defenders for the pass rush, and overall grade, he's second out of all the 112 defenders. So let's see. So let's go ahead here and try to go with an angle. I want to try one of these Marcus Mariota lineups first, but let's do the chalky one first. Let's go with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback. Looks like people are doing the onslaughts with Jalen Hurts. So let's get Brown and Smith in there. And they're doing Barkley. So tight end, let's go with Loveland because we've got too many Eagles in there right now. With the Eagles, we want to probably run it back with somebody. Let's get to that in a minute. And the Eagles D is probably going to be popular too. Let's look at these running backs. I think the best matchup beyond Saquon, Philly giving up 24.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. I think Chicago, with Green Bay giving up 21.5. I think Swift is going to be active in this one. Let's get him in there. Now, we're going to want to keep an eye on his injury situation on top of that. But let me check and see what the ownership's looking like on Swift this week. I'm going to see which of these guys is going to be the most popular. Yeah, Swift should be like around 50% owned. Could easily pivot to Monangai if you guys wanted to. We got Washington. We got 5K per guy. So let's take a look here. We got Hurts, Barkley, Brown, Smith, Eagles D. Let's go ahead and put McLaurin in there. And that leaves us with 4,200 in the flex. Goddard, you have a good double tight end there. That's easy enough. Like, this is a really easy build with putting the most expensive guys in there. So we can basically do whatever we want on this slate. So let's go ahead and so we got 4,200 left. If I was doing this lineup, I would probably get Burks in here somehow. I'd probably put Burks over McLaurin to leave me with 7K, where I can look at one of these guys like Christian Watson or Jaden Reed, because I want to get one of these Green Bay receivers in most of my lineups, because that's where the uncertainty is going to lie. I think not primarily, but like should be like a pretty uncertain thing on this slate, because people don't like figuring out those Packers. So if we can take a stand on one of these Packers, And I already talked about the man zone situation here, but let's take another look here. All right, so we got the Bears running man at a 9th highest rate in the league. Christian Watson, 0.77 fantasy points per route run, and Jaden Reed is 0.68. So we might want to put both those guys in. Let's you can pick one of those guys for like this build, but let's clear that out. Like this, kind of boring there. Let's go with Jordan Love. Let's double stack him with Watson and Reed, assuming Watson plays. And let's run it back with might as well run it back with Loveland. No, let's run it back with Zacchaeus. So for doing this, then we probably want to go to the running backs of the Eagles. And even though like Barkley is going to be 81% owned, let's just get him in there. And let's go with Swift as another run back for us in this game. And we'll go to the Eagles D. Let's just say that the Eagles D handles them. You know what? Let's get Zacchaeus out of there. Let's put in Burks. And let's find a tight end here. Let's just go with Goddard. Let's say that Goddard has a decent game. So we got Goddard and Barkley in there. This is with 10-2. Put anyone we want in there and have a ton of salaries still on the table. And I feel like we've got it pretty well covered with Love to Watson and Reed, running it back with Swift. And then we're taking the run game for Philly here. And adding Goddard and then running it back with Burks. We got the Eagles defense in here as well, the most expensive D on the slate, but it doesn't matter because we still got 10K. We're going to have money left on the table no matter what. I don't mind this build. We could go A.J. Brown here. We could go Josh Jacobs. We could go Terry McLaurin. We got our pick of the slate here. I wouldn't worry about like how much money you're leaving on the table. If you're going to go in a build like this, just put in the guys that you think are going to have the best matchups, because we see it every time we play a showdown slate. The most expensive guys are not necessarily going to be the highest scoring guys. You can find these guys in these good matchups. Let's see. Philly in the slot. Philly's got a good matchup all around here. But if Barkley's soaking up those touchdowns, then we don't have to worry about picking one of these receivers necessarily. In the other game, the weak spot is going to be, like Chicago's secondary against Watson and Reed are going to be the weak spot of the slate. And people are gravitating towards that Eagles game. I would rather gravitate towards this Packers game, because we got Packers, Chicago, division rivals, just like with the Eagles, Washington, like division rivals there. But the history of the Eagles, Washington, I think it's going to draw a bigger crowd over to that game. I was hoping it would go under the radar, but then I saw those ownerships and I'm just like, sucks, because I wanted to use the Philly, Washington game. But I think the most sense is going to be like to try to get a little bit different than the field, stick with the Green Bay, Chicago game. Let's try out a Mariota lineup so that we can play that other game. If we went Mariota, let's stack him with Burks. I keep going back to that name. I'm gonna have to do some more research on Burks. I'm just doing this for the sake of argument here. Let's go to wide receivers. Let's get Let's get Brown in here and Smith. Let's say that Washington's making it a little bit competitive here. Probably need McLaurin for that. And so the Eagles are trying to keep it close there with their wideouts. Let's go to the running back situation. Let's put Jacobs in here. And let's get Swift, because I think Swift is going to be busy in the pass game this week. I think that's inevitable. And let's get the Packers D in there. No, let's stick with the Packers D. Let's get Burks out of there. Let's put in Reed or Watson. Let's go with Watson in this one. Leaves us with a tight end that we need. We got 5,500 for the tight end position. We can put anyone we want still. Would probably go with Goddard. Goddard's probably my favorite tight end on this slate. He's not going to be sneaking under any radars, but it's going to be hard to find guys sneaking under the radar in this game. But that makes for an interesting build right there. And I think we're exploiting the weak spots for the most part in these lineups. We're getting a little contrarian. Or I guess it's not contrarian, going with the run game of Green Bay over the pass game. We still got Watson in there anyways. But if we wanted to get different with the Jalen Hurts, let's go back to Jalen Hurts here. If we put Hurts in there, let's give him Brown and let's give him Goddard. And it's typically when Barkley does well, Hurts does not, and vice versa. And if we look at Barkley throughout the season, a lot of these scores would not be enough even on a 2-game slate to get him in the optimal lineup. But we just have so much salary to work with, which is actually a good thing, because if people are trying to use up all their salary, they're going to automatically be putting in Barkley, and they're not going to like the questionable on Jacobs. They're not going to like the questionable on Swift, but I do like that. And when we're putting Barkley and Swift in the same lineup, people don't like to put opposing running backs against each other, even though Swift is probably going to be one of the guys that Caleb Williams targets frequently in this one. So we got Hurts to Brown and Goddard. We'll run it back with McLaurin. I'm going to put Burks in it too, because I think Burks' ownership is going to be low enough so that we can fly under the radar with him. I'm going to go to defense. Going to go with I think the Eagles just have the best defense on the slate. So I'm going to stick with the Eagles, even though I'm going for a potential shootout situation here. The defense can play a role in that. That's going to leave me with Devontae Smith, Chris Rodriguez. If we're going Hurts, we probably do want to put in one of these running backs. Let's go with Rodriguez. And let's go with Swift in the flex spot there. That leaves us with 1,100. Pretty solid. We got Jacobs versus the Bears. Let's see, do we have any Green Bay receivers though? I want to get Green Bay receivers in this lineup. That's where it's hard to put in Burks. Let's take out McLaurin, and let's put in Watson instead. which gets us a little bit different. Or it gets us Watson in there, but it also with Burks, we're gonna have if we get Burks in the lineup with this much salary available, like he's gonna be next to zero ownership. And if he's getting matched up against Adoree Jackson, we got Marcus Mariota in there. Let me check and see what his snap counts were. I'm going to see what Burks' snap counts have been recently. You guys are getting me thinking through this game more than usual. Because, like I said, none of the ownership information was out yet, so I hadn't really figured out how I want to attack it. But having that information makes a huge difference, and I'm taking a look at it for the first time and starting to get an idea of the direction that I want to go here by playing around with these lineups. All right, so I'm looking at snap count leaders. I can share this over with you guys. Let's look at Washington. 61%. Brown was back last week. He had 16%, but he's back on IR. Where's Burks? Burks had 46%. I mean, that's pretty good. Jalen Lane was a factor too. Let's see what Jalen Lane's. I just don't like Debo. He hasn't done anything. But let me see what his ownership is. Let's see. If we're looking at Debo, McLaurin, we got 50%. We're looking at 37% for Debo. Like for a guy who's done nothing. And then you got like guys like Treylon Burks and Jalen Lane and Chris Moore who are under 1%. If you pick one of those dudes, you're facing off against 1% of the field if that guy goes off and ends up being needed. Then you just got to make sure that you nail the rest of your lineup. You can do that. You could put in a 1% guy, like lock him in and maybe build like 10 lineups or 5 lineups, and then just run it through an optimizer and let the projections do the rest for you. If you wanted to go in that direction, I personally want a little bit more correlation with my lineups, but you can set those up in your optimizer too. Maybe run it through the Sims. Lock in one of these cheap guys and then run it through the Sims and make sure that they're putting in the correlation for you. Let's see. Who am I looking for here? We're looking for Jalen Lane. All right, so 1 target, 0 targets, 1 target. He hasn't been getting targeted a lot. Oops. Burks, what's Burks' situation? Oh, I already got him in here. 2 targets, 1 target, 4. I mean, Burks has been getting decent targets. He got 4 targets a couple weeks ago. And that's the one where he caught that touchdown against Denver. And that was a beast of a catch too. So, Burks, if he gets his opportunities in this one against Philly, against Adoree Jackson, then, he could score a touchdown. It's just going to be a matter of if he scores a touchdown, he's got to outscore. Let's take this out. 4,900 and down. He's got to outscore Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jalen Lane. If he can outscore those guys and we get Josh Jacobs outperforming Saquon Barkley, then that'll put us in a pretty good spot against the rest of the field, and then just go chalk with the rest of it. and you'd be competing with whatever the ownership is on that 1% guy. So leave some salary on the table on this one. I think it's the gist of it. I'll be putting up some insights as I'm doing more digging into this. I like the matchup potential for both of these divisional games. Divisional games this time of year have the tendency to surprise with totals, and they surprise with the actual outcome of the match. I wouldn't be surprised to see Washington beat Philly in this one, especially with all the turmoil in Philadelphia right now, and the putrid offense that they've been putting out. They're more than vulnerable in this game, but they could also have sorted it out, and maybe they have it sorted out. But you could build the narrative either way, that you want to kind of go along with your lineup construction. And then with the Chicago Green Bay game, obviously, that one could be super close. That's got a 1.5 point spread. We see Jordan Love step up in these primetime games all the time. Would not surprise me a bit to see him do it again in this one. And we could see, Jordan Love double stacks might be, my preferred route. I just don't see how Chicago is going to keep it that competitive with missing all their receivers. Let me double check and see if that line is still the same, because I put it together on the other day. Let's see. No, the Eagles are 7-point favorites now. And the Chicago, well, let's see. What did I have them as? 6.5. They're 7-point favorites. And the Chicago Bears are, still 1.5. So even with all that damage to their wide receiver core, just based on probably Micah Parsons being out, doesn't help the Packers out either. So, I mean, should be two competitive games. Going to be an interesting day on Saturday. Going to be a fun day, and hopefully we ship again, and we're able to get another viewer in the number one spot in one of these tournaments. Trying to figure out with Showdown. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with Showdown yet. Usually with these 2-game slates, if I put out a Showdown show, no one watches it, so it's kind of hard to invest the time in that when it's only going to get a couple hundred views. But I'll put insights in the sportnuggets.com for my favorite Showdown guys, and you guys can find them over there. Make sure to subscribe. It's a free beta preview. We're going to go to a paywall here before Christmas, but you get a notice when that happens, and we're not asking for your credit card information when you sign up for a free account anyways. We'll give you the option, once we go behind a paywall for the insights to sign up as a premium member. So nothing to worry about there, but check it out. sportnuggets.com, sign up, subscribe to the channel, help me get to 2,500 subscribers. I'm only about 60 away from there. All these freaking hits on these showdown lineups, building the winners on the show, hitting on these heat seekers on the underdog videos, these long shot touchdowns that keep hitting. People have been signing up, subscribing to the channel, so that's good. It's been going really well. I want to hit 3,000 by the end of the season, so help me get there. Hit that subscribe. Go subscribe on sportnuggets.com, and make sure that you hit that like button, and I'll see you guys. I might put out a Showdown show. It's going to depend if I have the time or not, but I'll definitely put the insights over on sportnuggets.com. Give me to 100 likes. I'll put the insights over on sportnuggets.com. All right, guys.